So did a big stock up of knitwear at Uniqlo over the weekend. So I'm feeling more prepared for this weather.
This Week in E-Commerce, episode 138. I am Mal Chia, back with you in the 26th of May we're recording. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. End of May. It's getting cold.
It's freezing. It's raining everywhere as well.
Is yeah. So did a big stock up of knitwear at Uniqlo over the weekend. So I'm feeling more prepared for this weather.
Fantastic, fantastic. I've loaded up when I was in Japan on a lot of like bombers and sweaters and things like that. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm actually looking doing a bit of a cull at the moment because I have no space for any more clothes.
I'm the same. There's crap everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, we have a big week of stories coming up. But before we get into that, I just wanted to do a bit of a shout out. I was at K Sydney last week. That was a really, really great event. And I got to say, I met one of my all-time podcast/marketing heroes, John Evans, who was fantastic. He records the Uncensored CMO podcast. So that was a really, really great event. So shout out to that. But also upcoming is Online Retailer we have coming up in July. So not too long to go to that. Alex, will you be there?
Yes, I will definitely be there with bells on. One of my favorite conferences of the year.
Me too, me too. I'll be hosting the Nora podcast stage again. We're going to try to record live there again this year, so watch out for that. But in the meantime, if you are thinking about going to Online Retailer, check in the show notes. We have 50 all access passes for the conference, so we will put the details for that in the show notes. Otherwise, send us a DM, and we'd love to hook you up. But getting into our first quickie of the week, I should say, is that Guzman and Gomez, after attempting to take on the US last year, have now effectively pulled out. They have closed all 8 Chicago stores with immediate effect. And this actually led to a 20% increase in their share price. So pretty significant move, I would say, after quite a lot of fanfare a few years ago with doing this. I remember covering this with Paul.
Yeah, I mean, we all love GYG and we're all kind of rooting for them. So this was a bit of a shocking one to see. I think I saw this on TikTok first, if I'm honest, about people losing their jobs. But then to see that kind of effect to their share price, they've obviously done the right thing and they're pulling back.
The US is expensive to crack into, especially when you think about like Tex-Mex, all right? The US is the home of Tex-Mex. You're competing with like Taco Bell, Chipotle, a lot of other brands like that. And I wasn't sure how they were going to compete, especially Chipotle is everywhere. There's like a Chipotle in every corner pretty much. And Chipotle is really good, I got to say. So look, I think this is a good example of the market kind of rewarding focus again and looking at, well, what's the backyard you can own? And they're really doing a great job in Australia. They continue to expand here. And I think the US is a bit of a distraction. I think the market recognized that and rewarded them for it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, moving into our second quickie, Rebel Sport. And I know we've been talking about Super Retail Group quite a bit the last few weeks, but 1,000 managers have launched a class action suit against them for allegedly underpaying full-time managers, making them work through breaks, work from home, off the clock, pre and post shift unpaid hours. So they're looking for a settlement of over $1 million for this. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when you said $1 million across 2,000 managers, my thought was, I don't know, maybe it's not that big of a underpayment just from those numbers at a high level, but obviously speaks to a broader kind of problem with managing retail. You know, like I remember being on the floor and it was always that expectation you need to be on the floor 10 minutes before your shift, but you weren't paid for that 10 minutes. So there's just some of that cultural pieces that isn't an excuse, but I think we need to wise up on kind of the obligations that brings to an employer.
You know, and that's a really good shout out because I remember having to come in early to open. I'd have to cash up at the end of the day, and that's generally unpaid. You don't put that in your hours. So I think it is sort of that expectation. Do you think also that maybe these managers are kind of taking the piss that as a manager you do have that added level of responsibility? Yeah, and that's kind of what goes with the title.
Yeah, well, look, I think it probably just depends on the contract and what those responsibilities were laid out as, right? But who knows? Because on the other side, so to your point, you know, selling up the till at the end of the day, or there's shoppers still in the store beyond close time and you're there kind of trying to politely usher them out of the store so you can get home. If we were paid for that, then people just, to your point, then taking the piss as well. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of play.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's definitely a good time that if you do have any full-time salaried store managers on a retail award, to really check what those award conditions are to make sure that you're not in violation of that. All right, moving to a good news story. Heaps Normal. I would never have thought that a beer brand would be launching a health club, but earlier this year, Heaps Normal opened up their Marrickville Health Club, which has now been named as one of the top 10 global retail experiences around the world. This is alongside names like Zara, Rolex, Erewhon, but they opened up a health club, the Heaps Normal Health Club in Marrickville, only in January, and are already making global lists. This is really impressive. Like, I don't mind the odd Heaps Normal beer every now and then.
Yeah. Look, this speaks to community, right? These are two influencers. God, I've forgotten their names, Jack and something else. They're hilarious. They are very talented. So it is different for the brand, but somehow it still kind of makes sense. And that's the beauty of it, right? And I think it being in Marrickville too, Sydney boys, then at least there's heart in it. So it doesn't feel like they're overstretching or trying to kind of completely reinvent the wheel.
And it's sort of that juxtaposition of like, it's an alcohol brand, well, a non-alcohol brand,
Yeah,
but health club as well, and really promoting it as like this wellness event,
exactly.
multifunctional space. Look, I think it's really cool. And I love to see what they continue to do with this concept if they do roll this out into other spaces. But really, it's like, how many brands can you think of who could launch something like this, which is totally kind of like loosely related to their brand and make it so successful? It's a fantastic, it's a fantastic undertaking.
100%. And look, it reminds me a little bit of, I think it was in Dota that purchased some spas in, I want to say Byron, probably 6 months ago. Is this story ringing bells? Now, obviously,
Yes. Yep.
different
It
because,
was Lorna Jane. Lorna Jane.
sorry,
Yep.
Lorna Jane. Lorna Jane. Okay, yep. So similar in the sense that it's going from product to experience and service.
Yeah, look, and to their credit, they don't actually just sell Heaps Normal stuff either. It's actually a really broad menu. I was just having a look before, and the space looks amazing. So definitely want to check out if you are in Sydney and in the inner west. So I will have to head there next time I'm there, which will be like
100%.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Let me
Okay, and speaking of openings, one of our favorite brands recently launched in Sydney only a couple of days ago on the weekend. Alo Yoga have launched their very first Australian store. So they opened their first Sydney store at Chatswood Chase. It's a 315 square meter space. And get this, opposite Lululemon.
Didn't know that detail. They know what they're doing, don't they? They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and considering that Lulu are in the news for all the wrong reasons at the moment, there was a story which came out fairly recently about how they're using forever chemicals in their products and they're not quite as good for you as they would have you believe. So they're really taking the fight to Lulu and really just staking their claim there. There were hundreds of people on opening day, queues wrapping around the center, and they're not stopping there. They're going to look to open another 4 sanctuaries. They don't call them stores, they call them sanctuaries around Australia by the end of the year. So it's a pretty big move for this, and especially going head to head with Lulu as well, really is like I said, putting the stake in the ground and saying that, okay, cool, we're coming for your share. So it's going to be interesting to see how Lulu respond to this.
100%. Look, I think it's aggressive. I kind of like it. And it'll be good to see how it plays out. If there wasn't room space for them to move into, then they wouldn't have that opportunity, if that makes sense. So this is, years of what's been kind of coming in the market. I love that detail of sanctuaries as well. That's those branding moments that are great.
Yeah, I was actually I didn't go to the Alo store, but I went to a Viore store in San Jose recently when I was there a couple of weeks ago. And it actually just felt like it's like any other retail experience. So I was actually a little bit disappointed with that. I was expecting a lot more from Viore rather than just like the typical, lots of racks and, all the clothes all over the place. I actually expected something a little bit more. So I was a little bit disappointed in their version of luxury premium. So I'd love to check out this Alo store and see what that's like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Look, I think before we move on to the next story, for a product like Alo, where touch is very important and obviously fit for their active wear. So just being able to see those products and see a basic retail store for Alo would still be really exciting for a lot of customers.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, now moving into our first deep dive of the week is one which I've recently experienced in that Amazon have made a big change to their US app and really doubling down on agentic commerce. So obviously they're the biggest online retailer in America, but recently they've decided to merge their Rufus AI and also Alexa into one agentic shopping assistant. And I had the displeasure of using this in the US. And I got to say, it was an incredible experience. You can go into the Amazon app, ask it anything, and it will curate a whole selection for you. So I tested it with a few things, and this isn't available in Australia yet, but I went into the Amazon app. I just put in looking for a kid's birthday party, for 8-year-old into Pokemon. I can't remember exactly what I put in. I think I put in Bluey, and it just surfaced everything which I would need for the party. And I could just browse through it. There's all recommended products, then alternatives as well. It really just made that whole experience really seamless. So I got to say, I was a bit like and I contrasted this in my mind versus Shopify and the agentic shopfront, where it's going to be available in LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude and things like that, and thought there's actually still a degree of like discovery and things which have to happen there. There's a lot of manual work, but there was just something about using the Amazon app where, you didn't have much control over it, but it just serviced everything and made it so easy. It was a bit weird. It felt a bit like the future of, what agentic shopping should be like.
Yeah. Look, I think like I've dabbled with Bunnings' version of a conversational assistant and trying to get it to solve complex problems. Like, look, I'm trying to hang this curtain, what kind of rod, or, those types of conversational queries. And it's nearly there. So you're saying that the Amazon one was just amazing out of the box.
It was really good. It was really good. Just I only tried like the party one, and then also said that, hey, I've just landed in the US, I need XYZ, and then it just surfaced like a whole lot of options. So it allowed me to get like almond milk and a few different things which I forgot for my trip, and just went, here's all the things which you could possibly need since you've just landed in the US, rather than having to go into individual product listings and having to explore, does this actually meet my needs? It actually surfaced it all there. So one of the issues I've got in the US is that I've got one of the new MacBooks which requires like a 60-watt charger, but my adapter only handled up to 30 watts. So I had to get a new one. So I put all that detail in there, and it just surfaced a whole lot of options for me, and then said, okay, you can have it later today. So we'll deliver it by 5 p.m. And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think it's that place of where you're at in the discovery journey. Are you pre-website, if you will, and that's those large language models, or are you on Amazon, are you on Bunnings, for example, and then using their own conversational assistant? So it's just kind of wrapping our heads around the places for AI and where they sit in those journeys.
Yeah, because and while the market share, if you look at like GA4 and you look at number of sessions coming from AI, that's starting to grow. I think there's been about a 45% increase in the last few months from the number of people using AIs to be able to search for products and finding your website. That's great. That's growing. But there's also still that clunkiness of that where, you're going to have to still search through a lot of different options. So yeah, I think, and I always think about how do you compete in that space to make sure, A, that you're going to be surfaced in that search, and then someone will come and buy your product. And yeah, B, how someone then goes on to buy your product. Are they going to buy directly, or they're going to go to different options if they have to shop around for a lot of different things? And that is obviously one of the challenges with D2C, that if you need to buy a lot of things from different places, it can take a while. Whereas if you have a store like Amazon, they just make it so easy. So it's just really got to be something where, from a D2C front, how do you compete against that? As well, what's that moat? Especially since a lot of retailers are also going to be selling on Amazon as well.
Yeah, and where does that AOV play make sense? No, it's really interesting, and the attribution of it as well. So great that we're seeing increases in large language model attributed searches, but what are those people that are finding your brand through ChatGPT, for example, then doing a basic Google branded search and landing on your homepage? So yeah, it's a big kind of messy ball of wool at the moment.
Yeah, and if you hadn't seen it yet either, and you're in Shopify, there's a pretty good chance that you've probably got your Shopify agentic storefront has been enabled for you, and you have no idea. I saw that email last week and went, oh, you're just turning it on for everyone without people opting in. It's an opt-out model for that. So if you haven't been thinking about how your products are going to be discovered by LLMs, it's a really good time to start thinking about that and how you start optimizing your product feed. I hear there's a few good apps for that.
I think, yeah, to round out this point, optimizing those feeds, that data for what you want to be discovered for beyond just product. So what's your brand about? Why is somebody the right fit for your kind of product in more ways than one? So occasion, material, sustainability, or trust, all of those pieces around a business need to be through the feed essentially for these large language models to read.
Yep, 100%. Okay, our second deep dive is Skin Candy, which is an Australian piercing retailer, have launched on the ASX. And this is the first genuinely successful ASX listing from the retail side for the year. So because when they launched at $2.20, around a $245 million cap, they increased 5% on debut, which is genuinely impressive given how soft the market has actually been. So this is a really interesting one because they're not a typical retail brand. They are more of a service provider. You get the piercings, but then you also buy the earrings from them as well. But they're a ridiculously high margin business as well. Just to look at their numbers, they're making nearly 10%, net profit on net profit after tax, which is insane. So you can imagine the EBITDA is significantly higher than that, and they've been rewarded for that. So it appears they've got a really good business model, which investors clearly think that there's an opportunity for this to grow. Alex, what do you think the kind of learning for this is, given that we've seen some challenges with other listings lately?
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week, kind of jovially around Birkenstock releasing nail polish, but it's that similar thing where Skin Candy, they're a service provider to your point, but they also have that matching retail product. So they've got that kind of circle of the market completely covered. It's a brilliant business model.
Yeah, I love it. I don't think there's actually one in South Australia. I haven't seen one anyway, but this is maybe kind of seek them out.
Yeah, I haven't seen one either.
Yeah, and I don't have any piercings anymore, but back in the day I had quite a few. So maybe it's time my mouth gets pierced again. We'll see. But anyway, one to look out for, and really just starting to think about that business model again, like you said, around like how else can you grow your ecosystem outside of your core product? What are those complementary things? And it kind of goes back to the Heaps normal one as well, where they've taken non-alc beer and built a whole wellness health club experience around that as well.
Exactly.
All right, now our final deep dive for the day is a big one in that in the US last week, it was, I hate to say, night of a thousand knives, but it kind of feels that way for AI and tech, because last week there were Meta cut 20% of their workforce. So 8,000 cuts across the world. Cloudflare cut 20%. Upwork 25%. Microsoft 125,000 voluntary redundancies. Intuit also had 17% of their workforce were let go last week, all in the name of efficiency through AI. And the Intuit one was interesting because I found out because someone I was meeting from there that morning cancelled and they haven't rescheduled. So
Right.
Unfortunately, it's we're seeing a lot of people who we know who are kind of being caught up in these layoffs as AI gets more of a foothold in the tech industry.
Yeah, it's a big rap sheet, I suppose, globally with what's going on. Whether it's really about that automation AI product, but it's a change in market for everybody. So I think ultimately this is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of it. But the interesting thing is that, if you talked to me about 12 months ago, I was very much an AI doomsayer, thinking that, okay, AI is going to be taking jobs, I'm going to be doing less. But I've actually found that because I'm using AI now in everything, I've got Claude hooked up to almost everything which I do, my output is actually increasing quite a lot. And yes, there is a degree where, the level of my thinking is going down a little bit. That's something which I have to more consciously think about. Okay, how do I make sure I don't just let the AI go wild? It's actually led to me being able to be more productive. And even at the Meta offices a couple of weeks ago, looking at all the engineers just sort of sitting around playing ping pong, I was wondering, what are you guys doing all day? And they're like, I'm just letting Claude do my work. I go back and check it, but now I can work on 5 times the task, 20 times the tasks I was previously able to do. And all I do is just go back and kind of guide the machine. So there's definitely those opportunities there. Do you see, with all the conversations you have, do you see many retailers who are properly adopting AI? Like, what's their approach? Are they looking to reduce headcount? Are they looking to increase output? Like, what's kind of been the vibe you're getting?
Yeah, I had a really good conversation about this at Retail Fest at a lunch with Paul and a few other partners and brands. What I'm hearing is just like varied degrees of adoption. There was one brand that was creating like 3 model personas, and you would know these models on their website. You'd come to know them as, I don't know, Frank, Paul, and Steve, for example. They've all got characteristics, but they are the fake AI models doing all of the imagery for all of the new product releases. So there's efficiencies in that. I haven't heard conversations around kind of taking away from headcount. It's more, how can we do more with less, really?
Yep, all the same.
Yeah, or the same. And how can we use AI to be more efficient?
Yeah, and I think there's some things as well. There's also an interesting story about Klarna, where in 2024, Klarna actually let go 700 customer service staff around the world. They've actually now walked that back, and this year have started hiring those people back again because they've kind of realized that there's probably like a line which you can't cross with AI, because otherwise your customers just lose that trust. And even then, like, I've been having some experiences with a couple of different tech platforms I use, trying to use support, and the AI just running me around and around and around in circles without really understanding that. So I think it's really important to monitor that as well.
So one question that was asked at this lunch was, what do you think will never be touched by AI? And I'll give him a shout out. Caleb from Milton and King was just talking around how customer service is a massive part of their business. They're a premium wallpaper business. And they were like, chats will never, ever be AI bot driven. Even that initial kind of prompt is somebody that works in the store or works for the brand. So thinking about those moments of where AI makes sense and then where it doesn't, and what's the core of the brand.
Yeah, and very similar to that as well. I read an interview with the founder of Take Two Studios, who own GTA and built the Grand Theft Auto franchise, saying that he's both. He's both for human creativity and he's for AI as well, where AI is helping them do a lot, but the initial work is always done by a human in terms of like, how do you develop this texture? How do you come up with this world? What's the thinking behind that? And then getting AI to help you scale that out rather than actually replacing it. Because I think the question to him was that, do you think AI is going to replace gaming? He also made the very good point that there are like hundreds of thousands of new mobile games get released every year, but fewer than 1,000 actually make any money.
Yeah.
So you still need that. And the magic of that is that AI is really good at copying things, but it's not good at creating new things as well. So I think that's another really good call out to think of as well, that you need to know what you're doing. You need to get your brand right. You have to get your processes, your policies, everything needs to be in place for AI to didn't accelerate. Because if you just get AI to create that for you from scratch, you're going to be swimming in a sea of mediocrity, I feel.
Exactly. Everyone's doing it. And look, just to wrap up the episode, I think with everything that we're speaking about today, we are doing a Discovery Day webinar this Wednesday. So it's Tuesday today. I presume this episode will come out Wednesday.
I was going to go out Wednesday.
So message me for the link or the recording even. I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday. Is it Thursday?
Otherwise, if you're one of the early listeners, and I actually know there are quite a few early morning listeners, because sometimes I get the message at like 9 a.m. It's like, my God, this only released 2 hours ago.
Yeah, exactly. So message me. Otherwise, we'll get the recording out to you as well. A lot about that kind of optimizing feeds for large language model discovery and where AI belongs in businesses.
Yep. And we will put that link in one of our future show notes. In the meantime, if you do want to come to Online Retailer, don't forget, we'll put the link in our show notes. Otherwise, hit us up in DMs. Keep innovating, keep growing, and keep selling. And we'll see you back next week.
See you next week.